Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, is yoga ancient or innovative? Practiced by millions, it's an industry worth billions of dollars. We explore how yoga has become a global phenomenon. So Malika and I went to a yoga class last night. We do go from time to time. How are you feeling, Malika?
I'm a little bit sore, to be honest.
Yes, me too. We won't go into that. We will go into, though, how the online community is reacting to this.
Well, for some people, yoga is a form of exercise, a really rigorous exercise. And for other people, it is a lifestyle. It's a way of life.
Sure.
And so we asked our stream community what yoga means to them, and this is what they told us.
Yoga should not have a religious connotation to it. It is purely a science.
Religions are more dogmatic, and yoga is more free.
It's a lifestyle. It's the way I treat others.
We'll talk about that lifestyle in today's show. You can tweet us your questions and comments using hashtag AJStream.
And also remember, there are so many ways for you to be part of this conversation. So don't forget to like us on our Facebook page. I have it right here, www.facebook.com/AJStream. And if you slide down, you can actually see there are lots of places for you to put your ideas in, comment on the show, and you too could end up in the stream.
Hi, my name is Eric O'Gray. I'm a vegan and health advocate, and I'm in the stream.
Now, yoga is everywhere as a sport, as meditation, as therapy, even as fashion. Its origins are often the subject of academic debate, but many agree the practice dates back more than 2,500 years to the Indian subcontinent. Now, it's said to have arrived in the West at the end of the 1800s, and what was once primarily a focus on a union between mind, body and universe was reinvented back in the 1920s to what we know now, which is more of an emphasis on aspects of health, exercise and challenging poses. And today, the reinvention continues. Have you heard of rave yoga? Take a look at this clip from the latest film in the Al Jazeera correspondent series, Who Owns Yoga?
I think what we wanted to achieve with it is that we're building up, so it was very traditional vinyasa yoga, and then we sort of started to kind of get dancey with it, and then at the peak of it, in backbends, when you're feeling really open and energized, bring on the loud music and then everyone goes crazy.
Get dancey with it? Is that even yoga? What does yoga actually mean to you? We'll discuss more on its origins and where it's headed. And to help us do that, we are joined by the author, Dr. Deepak Chopra. His new book is called The Future of God, a practical approach to spirituality for our times. From Philadelphia, Suhag Shukla is the executive director of the Hindu American Foundation. Eddie Stern is a yoga teacher and director of Ashtanga Yoga in New York. And from Doha, Banu Bhatnagar is an Al Jazeera producer and yoga teacher, and his film, Who Owns Yoga, airs on November the 20th, starting at 2000 GMT. It's great to have you all here on board. Banu, this was a little journey for you because you were trying to work out the origins of yoga and why it's got as big as it has and where it's spread around the world. Let me just ask you though something very simply to get us started. What actually is yoga? How would you describe it?
Well, first of all, it wasn't a little journey. it was actually quite a big journey, and I think the journey is almost ongoing still, even though the cameras have stopped rolling. But yeah. Yoga is, well, I think I just answered it there. I think yoga is a journey, and I continually learning more and more about yoga and myself the more yoga I practice. But fundamentally, yoga is about connecting my breath with my body and trying to sit still. In simple terms. Breathing
and sitting still. All right, Eddie Stern is a very well-known yoga teacher. Eddie, when you've got new students coming to you and you give them a bit of a pep talk, what they're about to do, what do you tell them?
Well, first you have to see what the student is looking for. And then you adjust what you're going to be teaching depending on the needs of the student. Some people come to you who are basically on a spiritual quest. They're questioning who they are and what their purpose in life is. Other people come because they have some sort of a physical ailment, or they're trying to recover from some type of a disease or a surgery or something like that. So yoga can be adapted to the individual. But there is one cohesive thread underneath it, which is how can you attain a certain level of concentration and focus in order to address the need of your life at any given time.
Right. I was chatting to Deepak in the pre-show just before we started on this main show, and he told us that he practices yoga pretty much every day now. So when you're doing that, Deepak,
I see the sun's blaring on me.
When you're doing that, Deepak, what is it that you're doing in terms of a physical practice, or is it a spiritual practice? How would you break it down?
Well, I do both. I do 1 hour of meditation every day. Actually 2 hours of meditation every day, and then I do the yoga asanas for 1 hour. Right now, for example, I'm in El Paso, so as I travel the country, in every city, I find a yoga teacher to take me through the motions. Eddie Stern, of course, is my guru. He's my teacher, and I always report to him regularly about my practice. But for me, yoga is a way of getting in touch with myself. The word yoga means union. It comes from the Sanskrit word yuj. It's the origin of the English word yoke. So yoga is a way for getting in touch with my innermost being, whether it's the physical postures, asanas, or it's the meditation. They complement each other, as do the breathing techniques, as do the other limbs of yoga. You know, yoga has codes of conduct called yama, niyama. Yoga has dhyan, dharana, samadhi, which are procedures for directing awareness, transcendence, and also for meditation. So yoga is a very holistic science.
And yoga asanas are just very simply the yoga postures. Malika.
Right. Well, you know, in asking what yoga is to other people, we are hearing responses like this from Johanna on Twitter, who says, for me, yoga is a way of life. It's not a hobby. It's a means to achieving spiritual tranquility through a disciplined routine. But Suhag, of course, this started in India, and as it's progressed through the world and reached the Western part of the world, we see criticisms like this. This is a tweet that we got from Turgish, and he says, yoga has become a sort of elitist lifestyle statement, especially particularly here in the United States. So what do you say to criticism like that?
I think it's spot on. One of the biggest issues that yoga is facing is its commercialization. And I wouldn't necessarily say that it's something that's only happening in the West, but it's certainly stemming from a Western mentality of commodification. So when a yoga class is going to cost you an arm and a leg, when traditionally yoga was taught for free in open parks in India, or when a pair of yoga pants that promise to lift your butt and make you look tight are going to run you about $150 or whatever, you can see how that criticism falls squarely in the truth.
So Suhag, do you not charge for your yoga classes then? You have free yoga classes?
There are a number of temples throughout the United States and centers that do provide yoga classes for free. There are the realities of paying bills and paying rent, and certainly donations or dan, which is very much a part of the Hindu tradition, is always appreciated. So, but you know, when you're paying monthly fees in a place like a gym, for instance, where really asana or the postures or yoga is marketed as exercise as opposed to kind of training towards a spiritual marathon, it very quickly veers into market.
Banu.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, you know, I agree with Suhag to an extent that, you know, commercialization and the sort of the capitalist system that we live in can turn yoga into, or dilute the message in a sense. But isn't it the same system as well, the same capitalist system that has enabled yoga to explode all around the world and brought yoga to millions of people around the world and probably transformed millions of lives as well?
Well, I would just say to that it depends on how we define yoga. I think that the capitalistic system has absolutely introduced the world to asana and posture, but whether it has opened the world to the remaining, the more integral parts of a holistic discipline that is yoga, whether it's self-study, self-awareness, the understanding of consciousness and the self and the interrelationship between the two, I think that's still questionable.
You know, picking up on that argument that you mentioned, Banu, there's actually this tweet from Aditi, and I'll direct this to you, Deepak. Aditi says, do you think that Western commercialization of yoga is a form of cultural appropriation? Do you view it as such?
I don't view it as such. As I just mentioned, I get a yoga teacher wherever I go, And I would be really feeling embarrassed if I didn't pay them. These yoga teachers have taken training. And in fact, my experience with yoga teachers all over the West is that they're passionate about more than just the asanas or the postures. They're very passionate about the knowledge. I have yet to meet a really ordinary yoga teacher in my travels. So I think the West's popularization of yoga has actually increased the interest in the other aspects of yoga, including self-awareness, as I mentioned, all the other 8 limbs of yoga. The yoga teachers that I meet on the road, by the way, have all taken training from regular schools and great masters like, the schools of Iyengar or Pratibha Joyce or Eddie Stern or many of the Ashtanga yoga schools. So I think what has happened in the West has really made yoga a real good science for self-awareness. And I have difficulty finding good yoga teachers in India. I go back to India all the time, and I don't find them so easily as I find them in El Paso or Denver or Philadelphia or New York.
That says a lot, I think, about the world.
Yeah, and also there's one other thing as well, that people hear the word yoga and they go to whatever kind of yoga it is. They go to it because they've heard the word yoga. And the types of feedback that you get from people is they feel more relaxed, or they feel less stressed, they feel more calm. It's very rare that you hear someone bragging about their biceps or their pecs or anything like that from going to yoga classes. You might hear that after they've come out of an exercise class.
And so Eddie, very soon they get interested in the other aspects of yoga. I've yet to meet somebody who's just doing it for physical exercise.
All right, so
some of the people we spoke to in the film.
So guess, give me a pause for a moment.
Kind of the exception to the rule.
Right.
I mean, the lineages that Deepak mentioned, Pratibha Joyce or Iyengar, those come from a rich guru shishya tradition, meaning a teacher-to-student tradition that's passing on certain systems. And they are very committed, both those schools are very committed to teaching holistic yoga. But if you go to your average gym yoga, you will hear talk about this is going to lift your butt, or this is going to give you the lines that you want in your triceps. So I don't think that's necessarily a reflection of the vast majority of yoga that we see in the West.
Suhag,
a lot of the people. Sorry.
Guess, let me just share something with you, just for a moment here. This comes from Who Owns Yoga. Have a look here on my laptop, because this makes me want to cry, because I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do this kind of position. This is yoga as a competitive sport. You think that's amazing? Let me show you one more here. Look at that. How is that even possible? Banu, you were there. What did you make of it?
I was there.
Yeah.
It was so fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, so this was the International Yoga Sports Federation, the IYSF, and they were holding their annual competition in London. And their stated goal is to make yoga an Olympic sport, and that usually causes a reaction amongst most people, including myself. I thought, well, that sounds strange. And then as I was watching these competitors, I was completely drawn in to the beauty of the physical posture that they're doing, and they had to hold poses for a certain number of seconds, and it was an intense form of concentration for them to be able to do that.
See, Banu,
so in a sense, they are performing yoga.
So what was interesting though, Banu, was that Eddie was saying that most people don't do it to say, hey, look at my muscles, but this seems to be yoga as an exercise taken to a whole different level, Eddie, right?
No, because what's happening is that you're using the body in order to access something deeper. You're using the body to work on your concentration, to work on your breathing, to work on your balance, to work on your inner resiliency. There's all these different aspects which are going into the use of the body to access your mind, because your mind is everywhere. Your mind isn't just in your brain. Your mind is everywhere through the whole body. It's all of our processes. So you use the physical body as a jumping off point to access something deeper about who you are and what your capabilities are. And that's what people get out of it.
One of the characters in the film, actually mentioned, yes,
Let me go Deepak, Suhag, and then Banu. So Deepak, you go first.
At our center, you know, at our center, the Chopra Center for Wellbeing, our main thrust is understanding consciousness and all the different ways one can practice self-awareness. And we've been looking at the effects of the postures on what happens in the brain, what happens to our genetic expression, to our genome. This is a whole new science that is bringing yoga now to the frontiers of neuroscience and epigenetics, and even questioning Darwinian evolution as the most accurate way to describe evolution, rather than, you know, we're beginning to look at consciousness driving evolution of species as well. So I think because of the popularity of yoga, we have the opportunity now to look at the deeper aspects of yoga. So I don't mind going to Equinox and taking on a yoga class, because as long as I can get into the posture and shift my awareness there and direct my awareness, I have the deeper realization that consciousness is the field of possibilities that directs our mind and body.
Well, in addition to that, you know, Banu, I want to bring this up because I'm seeing this tweeted to us right now, and so I want to bring this into the conversation, because in addition to the aspects of the mind and becoming that, you know, that union between the mind and the body, I'm seeing people talk about the religious aspect. And so we have this tweet from Melina who says, in Western societies, it thrives mostly for its fitness benefits, but it can be a spiritual experience. But for some, that spiritual experience isn't a good thing, because this person tweets in, I would do yoga except for its association with Hindu worship. Banu, can you take us through the religious aspect, and is it a religious experience for you?
Not particularly, no. I mean, I grew up in a Hindu household, and, you know, I grew up sort of hearing mantras and going to temples and things like that. And so when I started doing yoga, this is what's interesting for me, you know, personally, because when I started doing yoga, I came to it in the West, and I noticed that all these kind of Hindu or Buddhist paraphernalia existed in yoga, but in a sort of secular sense. The people who were practicing it didn't identify themselves as Buddhist or Hindu, yet were engaging in sort of Hindu or Sanskrit mantras and things like that. So I think yoga can be religious if you want it to be.
Right.
I think it's as simple as that.
Suhag.
I would just say that Hinduism is different from most of what the West understands as religion. And so to me, in Hinduism, religion and spirituality are one and the same. And for that reason, and the very purpose of yoga in the texts, in the Vedas, in the sutras, is union with consciousness, union with the divine. You know, that's not a secular purpose. We're not talking about just the body and the mind, but there is a definitive metaphysical assumption that all of us innately have this divine energy within us, and we have the potential to experience oneness with the cosmos, and that's in and of itself religious.
Suhag, so if Banu says it can be religious if you want to, you're actually saying no, that it's not optional. The religious spiritual part of it is not optional. Is that what you're saying to Banu?
I mean, when we're talking about some of the experiences that people feel after asana, after meditation, that dropping away of individuality and that feeling of oneness, whether it's with our neighbors, whether it's with nature, whether it's with a higher being, that's a religious experience. So people may not necessarily use that word, because in the West, the understanding of religion tends to lean more towards dogma as opposed to personal experience of something greater.
I want to share something with you.
I'd have to agree with Banu on this thing, that religion is, usually thought of as dogma, ideology, whereas the religious experience or the spiritual experience you get with yoga is the one of universality, is one of union with your inner being, which ultimately you realize is also all being. So it does ultimately lead to that spiritual experience. People have the option not to practice it because they are fearful, but if they do practice even the asanas, I can guarantee you that sooner or later they will fall into a spiritual experience. There's no question about it.
Banu,
even if it's
you
not
had
a
a question.
spiritual
Oh, go ahead, Annie.
But I'm not talking about religious dogma. I'm not talking about religion as, ideology or rules and regulations of a particular sect.
No, for sure.
Eddie, go ahead.
The one thing that people will have through practicing yoga is a deep experience of themselves. And so however they want to characterize that is going to be based on their own perceptions and their biases and their affinities, etc. But they will have a deep experience of themselves. And that is essentially what yoga teaches. And what you want to make of that will be determined by, who you are. But I would like to say, because I know we don't have a long time, this idea of actually who owns yoga, the question itself, I mean, obviously no one owns yoga, though some people might try to own it. But yoga, according to my teacher, is basically, he used to say that yoga is Patabi Joyce, is no one man's property or no individual's property, but it was India's gift to the world. And I think that once a gift is given, that's a beautiful thing, and the gift should be enjoyed by the people who have received it. So I think the question isn't so much who owns yoga. That's not quite really what we're getting at. The problem we encounter is that, if I give Suhag, for example, a gift, whether it's a hat or a poem or a donut or something like that, I want her to enjoy that gift, and I want her to wear that hat or eat that donut and love it. And then anyone later who says, Suhag, that's a great hat, I love it, she'll say, oh yeah, my friend Eddie gave it to me.
So Eddie, is yoga a donut or a hat that can be passed around the world to be enjoyed?
It is.
Right?
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's exactly a donut with sprinkles on it.
With lots of sprinkles.
And here's the last thing about that. The last thing is that when a gift is given and you appreciate it, then you have gratitude and thanks for where it came from.
Right.
So the thing that we want to have happen in the West is that we want to have this growing, expanding field of yoga, and the people who are learning it and carrying it forward, we want them to remember where it came from, to acknowledge where it came from, to learn something about where it came from, and carry that forward with thanks in their hearts wherever they end up taking it, so that this thread of appreciation doesn't get lost and people don't start thinking that they invented it. Because it's when people start thinking that they invented it that they take ownership, and that ownership means that it's a property, and that property leads to the question, which is the wrong question, of I own this.
Wow.
And that's the problem.
Knowledge flourishes when it is shared.
One
at a time, everybody, because you're all saying fantastic things. So Deepak said, knowledge, finish his sentence, Deepak. So we can hear it.
I said knowledge flourishes when it is shared.
Fantastic.
And the more we share that knowledge, the better it flourishes. So I don't think we can own any knowledge. We don't say gravity is British because Newton discovered it.
But I think it possibly could be. Okay. I take your point. Suhag, very briefly, we're almost at the end of this show.
Sure, I was just going to kind of carry off of what Eddie just said in terms of some of the work that we did at the Hindu American Foundation through our Take Back Yoga project that really was our intention to educate people on the Hindu roots of yoga. Now, people may argue about religion versus spirituality, but for people, they need to first understand that Hinduism has universal teachings. It's not geared towards any chosen people. It's not exclusivist, meaning you don't have to convert to it. You can benefit from it. And so it's for our children to know that this was a great gift that our ancients provided to the world for everyone to benefit.
Very good. All right, now I just have time to tell you about...
I would love it if there were more Hindu yoga teachers.
All right.
There aren't enough Hindu yoga teachers.
To the post show, you can tell they still have a lot to talk about. Let me tell you about Who Owns Yoga. It is going to be on Al Jazeera English coming up in the next day at 2000 GMT. It is really worthwhile watching. And on our next show, where every 10 minutes a baby is born stateless, and without a state, you don't have a legal identity. We'll be discussing what the UN plans to do about this, and we'll do that in our next discussion. See you online, stream.aljazeera.com. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Streams Post Show. We're discussing who owns yoga. Let's get right back to that conversation. I'm so glad we have extra time, because did you notice all of the guests had so much to say and share with us? We have extra time, thank goodness. Okay, where are you going to take us?
Well, the most memorable thing as we were ending the main show to head into the post show that I heard was from Deepak Chopra, who said that knowledge flourishes when it's shared. And I love that, because this is shared by our community. So Sumaya on Twitter says, yoga is no one's personal property, but collective inheritance of the human race, which luckily we, the Indians, are proud to be the source of. Unfortunately, though, there are people, and I will share this next tweet, who think that there are parts of yoga that can be patented. There's companies like Bikram Yoga is for one, and that's what this person is talking about. Moro says, yoga patents. It gives me a great idea. I will patent breathing and relaxing and sweating. It's tongue-in-cheek, but he's poking fun at the idea that you can patent something like yoga.
All right, so this is something that, Banner, you discovered as you went and visited somewhere called Yoga Glow. So you went off to visit them.
Yes.
This is Derek Mills, who is trying to patent, what is he trying to patent? Is the look of a video class.
Basically, he won a patent for the way he shoots his yoga classes, which are then streamed online.
Right.
So yeah, have a look.
Yes, so have a look, as Banner would say.
A lot of work goes into the entire class creation process to make sure that what people experience online is a high quality, safe experience. It's a look and feel that people have associated with Yoga Glow, and it's a look and feel that we certainly plan to protect.
Eddie, what do you make about that? I mean, every yoga class I've been to, there's been a gap down the middle, yoga mats on either side. How can that even be a patent?
Oh, frankly, I think it's ridiculous. That's really all I have to say. It's ridiculous. And I think that these, these are basically free market economy ideas which are being transposed onto a contemplative wisdom tradition. I don't think they mix, and that's all there is to it. People are going to do this stuff anyway.
Yeah.
I would not encourage it. I wouldn't encourage it as an example for other people to follow.
Sure, but there is a deeper conversation about different styles and practices of yoga that do seem to be at odds with each other, that takes us beyond this, oh, I'm patenting my video class, that there is some tension within the yoga community. And
when that tension arises, it's clear that the people who have those conflicts are missing the point. That's all there is to it. We are all human beings who, when we do yoga, are engaged in a particular type of a path, for lack of a better word, and to set ourselves off from other people who are also seeking to know themselves on a deeper level and criticize the techniques that they're using, I think it's just missing the point. And there needs to be a maturity level and a sophistication level that has to come up in the entire community, and I think we will get there. I think that yoga in the West, it's very new and young to us. We have some growing to do, and I'm confident that we all will grow and get along better in the future.
Right now, where's the biggest heat, do you think, Eddie, in the discussion about yoga traditions and practices in the West?
The biggest heat?
Yeah, the biggest amount of heat.
Probably one of the biggest amounts of heat is directed towards Bikram Yoga and his patenting of his 26 postures.
Yeah.
Again, he has the right to do that according to the marketplace. He has the right to say that these 26 postures that I put in a particular order are mine and I can patent it. He wants to protect the fidelity of the way his system is taught, or maybe he's after money. I really don't know. Either way, it is his right. However, there also comes with the idea, then, as soon as you patent something like that, you say, I've created this. I am the creator of this thing. And obviously, we're not the creators of yoga. It's been around for a long time, and it's been passed on to us by a lot of other people. And this idea of removing, it's like removing a cup of water from a stream and saying that this cup of water is the entire stream of everything, and I own it now.
Wow.
It's not. There's
in the defense of the U.S. justice system, Bikram wasn't actually awarded. I was just going to correct you there. It was a copyright that he.
A copyright. Sorry.
He wasn't awarded it, but it did open up a lot of questions, and he appealed. He appealed the verdict, and I believe he's still appealing it. But as of today, he does not have a copyright on his sequence. But it throws up lots of questions, and I think that was part of the reason I wanted to explore this subject, because here was this science that is handed down. It's part of my heritage. And, you know, there were people all over the world trying to grab a piece of it, a sort of land grab, if you will. Precisely because it's making money today, and it didn't make money 10, 20 years ago. And today, it's making lots of money. So, you know, that's the kind of system we live in. And I don't think we're, like Eddie said, that's not going to change. You know, there will always be land grabs. There will be people that are trying to make money out of you know, knowledge or wisdom. But, you know, you just have to strive to practice yoga with integrity and to teach it with integrity.
Well, Suhag, I'm actually interested in hearing how you would address those land grabs, as Banu said, because there's one suggestion online. This is from one person on Twitter who says, reclaiming is hard, but we could try to ensure more certified Indian practitioners abroad and a re-emphasis on yoga itself. Do you think that would help?
You know, yoga, it depends on the intent of the practitioner. Certainly, when you're born within a tradition or you're surrounded by a certain worldview, it shapes who you are and how you see the world and what you see as your ultimate goal. And there are certain, you know, metaphysical understandings of karma and dharma that certainly would put you at a good predisposition to learn yoga. But I think equally, someone, you know, Eddie's a perfect example of someone who has really taken to heart the full holistic discipline. He's followed a group and shishya tradition, and, you know, the color of one's skin or where they were born, I don't think should really matter. But patenting yoga is just the tip of the iceberg of really looking at a lot of ancient wisdoms, whether it's trying to patent turmeric or, you know, for its health benefits. There's a number of things that I think it's probably a new generation of imperialism, and as a response, the Indian government has looked into trying to patent or put out certain poses that come from India. I don't know if that's necessarily the solution, and I would hope that we can seek a solution from within the wisdom traditions rather than ape this kind of Western notion of ownership.
All right, guess who?
Well, what the Indian government has tried to do is to create a database. So what they've actually done is create a database of yoga poses and Indian traditional knowledge that that they see as, you know, part of their heritage, so to prevent anyone else from trying to own or copyright it.
And they have a ministry of yoga, which is fantastic. Guests, just take a pause for a moment, because I just want to ask, who actually has a book out right now? I know, Banu, your documentary is on Al Jazeera English. That's coming up in the next 24 hours. Suhag, what do you have right now that you're working on? Current project? Yeah. Do you have a current?
I have it right here.
Oh my goodness! And this wasn't even planned. What is that? What is that? Tell me about that book.
I am reading Vedic Yoga: The Path of the Rishi by David Frawley.
Okay.
And he.
Are you involved in that book?
I'm not involved in it.
Okay, you're just reading it. All right. So
I'm just reading.
This is a reading recommendation for your book list. Okay, everybody. Eddie, what do you have going on? What's your latest project?
My latest project?
Yes, your newest
one.
My
latest project is working with the Sonima Foundation for Health and Wellness, and we're trying to implement wellness programs in public education.
Beautiful. We've plugged everybody apart from one person. Let me have a look on my laptop here. The Future of God, Deepak Chopra. Deepak, this is brand new, coming out right now, basically. What do we need to know about your latest work?
Well, the book was inspired by the militant atheist movement, which says that if you don't have anything, if you have a view outside the materialistic physicalist ontology, then you're basically misguided and deluded. So my book addresses what I call naive realism, the naive realism of people like Richard Dawkins, which basically say that if you don't have empirical evidence for something, then it doesn't exist. And the book is saying, no, consciousness is more fundamental than empirical evidence, because consciousness is unseen, but it makes empirical evidence possible. And now there's a lot of work in mathematics and physics that suggests that consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, more fundamental than gravity or space or time. So the book is called The Future of God because at one point it addresses science, but it also links it to the wisdom traditions of India.
Now, normally we don't do
Can I just
adverts
ask
on.
a quick question?
Yeah. Go on. Ask your quick question very quickly before we lose our satellite link.
This idea of consciousness is so difficult to understand. So Deepak,
Banu, are you seriously asking that question with 2 minutes to go?
Yes.
Banu, consciousness is what is possible. Consciousness is what is making it possible for you and me to communicate and for people to actually see us and listen to us. So consciousness is that which makes experience possible, whether it's mental experience or perceptual experience. Right now, the two most open questions in science is what is the stuff of the universe, and the second is what is the biological basis of consciousness, and the answer in science is we don't know. But there are other wisdom traditions that say that the stuff of the universe is consciousness, and there's no biological basis for consciousness because consciousness expresses itself as biology. You'll have to read the book to get a deeper understanding of this.
That is the best answer. I like the way that Banu was nodding as if he understood everything that Deepak was actually saying. All right, I believe you.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. All right, our central question today was who owns yoga? And I guess unpacked it in a brilliant way. Thank you to Deepak, to Suhag, to Banu, to Eddie as well. There's something I want to play for you though before we leave. It comes from Banu's documentary, Who Owns Yoga? He spoke to someone called Sat Guru, and Sat did such a great way of summing it up. I want to share his comments with you. Have a listen to this.
You don't wear a garland for its thread, you wear it for your flowers. But there is never a garland without a thread. It is the most vital thing. So you can add whatever you want, but you don't distort the thread. You cannot do innovations in the fundamental dimension of yoga. But from your experience, you can add various dimensions to it without distorting the fundamental nature of what it is.
Has yoga moved beyond being Indian?
Just because sun touches Indian shores before it touches Doha, can we claim sun is Indian? Because yoga is just like that, it's a certain light that arose here first. This does not mean it's in Indian in any sense. India as an identity today is a national and a political identity. Yoga does not belong to that identity at all. It is the sickness of modern societies today that if I discover something in nature, I must own it. Intellectual property. What I'm saying is the nature of this culture has always been, if something is for the well-being of human beings, nobody can ever own it, it must belong to everybody.
I need a Sat Guru in my life. That guy is phenomenal.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing.
Yeah, Banu, hold on. We're wrapping up the show, so no one's allowed to say anything more for now. We're going to take all the conversation online. Malika, what's online saying right now?
Well, I will answer our central question on who owns yoga with this tweet. This is from Lawrence, and he responded to a tweet that Banu sent out earlier. Lawrence says, ownership of yoga would be like declaring ownership of Christianity or ownership of Islam or ownership of history. Clearly, he says it can't be done.
Wow. I have one more thing to say to our guests. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you, everybody. All right, moving on to the next show. Well, what will we be doing? Every 10 minutes, a baby is born stateless, and without a state, you don't have a legal identity. We'll find out how the UN plans to change this. We'll find that out on the next AJ stream. Until then, see you online.